Great day, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to the Strategic Possibilities Show, where we discuss success and growth to help you launch potential in your personal and professional life. My name is Emmett Ferguson, and I am your host. All right, and today I have my very special friend who's a guest on this podcast today. His name is Tjaden, and I also know him through Will Gant, who in a previous podcast episode, he was a entrepreneur in the field of those awesome escape rooms nowadays. So, I love this entire network that's you and DQ and Will Gant, you all went to Shanghai together and have this amazing story of, being able to stay connected. And I think in this world, where we're constantly on social media and, it can be easy to get lost because you start, connecting with so many different people. Can you share some tips for, people that are getting out of college on how to maintain like such great professional relationships?
Yeah. The biggest thing I'd say is it starts with you. Relationships are a two-way street, but if you really care about someone and catching up with people, it has to start with you. A lot of my friends, so a little background, I grew up in Asia. I was born in South Korea, lived in Asia for 11 years, and that's kind of what drove me to building these relationships. So some of my best friends from when I lived abroad or when I studied in Italy, or when I worked in China for 4 years, 3 years with Nike, and then a year with Will, actually 2 years with Will. And it really starts just by a simple text message or a simple, LinkedIn message, or even just calling them and just saying, "Hey, how are you? I just want to talk. I don't have anything to say. I just want to say, hey, how are you? We haven't talked in a while." And I think a lot of people don't understand that social media is a huge tool to keep in touch with people. I use social media. A lot of my friends give me a lot of crap because I always post that, hey, I'm at an airport, or I'm at a lounge, or I post like, hey, I'm going to Italy, this weekend. And it's a lot of my friends in the US that are saying, why do you post these things on Facebook, on Instagram, on, social media? And I say, it's not for you guys. It's for my friends abroad. It's for my friends in Italy, my friends in London, my friends that I haven't seen in years, that it might show up on their timeline and they reach out to me. It's, a great example is I just went to Rome, or to Italy, for 5 days. And as soon as I landed, I had WhatsApp messages from people saying, hey, I'm in Rome. Can we meet up? Or, hey, I had a very good friend who was flying into Venice, and he's like, hey, are you going to be in Venice in 3 days? And I said, yeah, I will actually. Let's meet up for lunch or dinner. And that's where it's the small things, but you have to be willing to be a little bit vulnerable and say, hey, I'm going to put this out because I want people to know where I'm at in the world and what I'm doing, not to show off, but to connect with other people.
Absolutely. And you know what? I got to say that, I love your airport updates, man. It just like keeps people updated. And like, I see you like in different like types of airports, and you've always got like a great story to share about it as well. So, I'm glad I've been able to keep touch with you in that sense. And, absolutely amazing that you're bringing up that point about not being, self-promotional or whatever. Because I definitely can feel like, some people might be scared to post on social media because they're thinking they're self-promoting. But, when you come with the philosophy that, you want to stay connected and, since you travel so much, I really appreciate that comment about it.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I know one thing is a lot. I know my aunt was like, well, you shouldn't post that, you're traveling because someone could break into your home. And I'm like, that's another way with social media where I think you should be aware of what you're posting. You shouldn't be saying, oh, I'm in Italy for 5 days and no one's at my home. But you have to be very conscious about what you're posting and what's the message. Is it, I want to post, that I'm flying to Rome to see friends, or do I want to post to Rome of, hey, I want everyone to know that I'm abroad? So it's really that message. And then you kind of see, who responds and whatnot. And you also, you trust everyone who you're connecting with.
Absolutely, especially, on Facebook. So I think that's such a personal social media platform. Whereas Instagram is just like, post something hilarious that maybe not be completely relevant to your life, but may be relevant to your brand. And speaking of that, earlier you mentioned working with Nike, and I think it's so interesting because it's like, I do follow you on social media, and every once in a while you'll be like taking a photo with an amazing basketball star. I was just like, man, that's so cool. Like, what kind of projects have you done with Nike?
So a few projects. This started back in 2015, where it was just more freelancing, marketing, and working with players. So a few different projects was in China. I'd help oversee the Nike Rise Tour. So basketball players would come in. So a few examples: Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Paul George, and they would showcase their shoe. They'd promote their shoe, and they would need someone that, one, understood events, but two, also like to work in a group setting. You have volunteers for all these different events, and you're like, hey, I want to, reach out, or I want to be a part of it. How can I be more involved with it? And it's transpired into more so relationships. So I always, you say the comment of, oh, yeah, I see these photos with you and every player. I don't post a lot of photos with different players, solely because I'm not that type of person that I want to showcase. Hey, I was at dinner with Kobe Bryant the other night, or I was sitting courtside for one of these games. That's not who I am. And that's something where a lot of players and a lot of famous people that I've found, as well as you, I'm sure can relate to this, is if you just have a conversation with someone and you honestly just treat them like a human being, it says so much more about it. There's a player who I think is one of the next best basketball players. His name is Davide Moretti. He plays for Texas Tech, number 25. And we honestly met and we connected. And ever since then, I've just said, hey, let's go and have dinner after a game. Or like, I drove up one night in January. It's a 5-hour drive. I drove up for the game, turned around right afterwards and drove back. And it was something where I didn't post about it or anything, but it was more of just working with him and saying, hey, I'm here for you. Do you just want to talk about, hey, you missed a free throw last night. Let's talk about that. Or, let's talk about something other than basketball. Cause you'd be amazed at how many people come up to these athletes and say, hey, I want your autograph. I want your photo. I'm your biggest fan. Mm-hmm. But you don't really know that they're an actual person. Like, they go to the grocery store just like you and me. They have drinks with friends just like you and me. But maybe just open a conversation, say, hey, what do you think of, I couldn't even tell you. I mean, some of my best moments were when I got to work with Kobe Bryant, and he's one of my favorite athletes I've ever met, because he knew my name and where I was from within the first 24 hours of working with him. And he'd always ask, hey, so are you the only child? Or what transpired you to learn Mandarin? At such a young age, and, you're a blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid from Iowa. Why are you over here? And it's just, wow. And then I'm like, that's weird. Just talking to them and getting more on a personal level with them, mm-hmm. and not using their status or their fame for, tickets. And that's something where, one of my biggest pet peeves are people that use others for other things. So when Texas Tech went to the championship game, the national championship, my phone instantly blew up because everyone knew that I was good friends with Davide Moretti. I had connections, and I said, no. I have an agreement with Davide, and I told him the first time I ever met him, if you have an extra ticket for any of your games, I would love to. But if you don't, I understand. I don't expect to get anything in return from any players that I'm friends with. I don't expect to get any free gear from Nike working with them. I don't expect to get anything in return from anyone, honestly. But when I do, I always say, thank you, or, can I repay a favor or something like that?
That's amazing. And when I did bring up, I see you with basketball stars every once in a while. I didn't mean that in a sense like, oh, you're constantly posting photos. Like, I definitely, sense a strategy to what you do. It's part of your brand, and with the fact that you're in marketing, I can definitely appreciate like how you present the work that you've done as a in your industry, I guess, in sports and marketing and all that.
No, of course. And yeah, when you asked the question, I knew you wanted me to dive a little bit more into it, and I appreciate that. Yeah, I will say it is really a great opportunity, and I'm very blessed with everyone that I've gotten to meet, but that's all because, per se, I've just taken that extra step to make it more personal, just like you and I did, where our relationship formed from Will, and we never met before until 2017 in October. And I was in LA and we
Right.
had dinner. I remember that. And that's where a lot of my relationships with athletes have been through phone calls or text messages, or even, Davide Moretti and I met through Instagram. And I always joke, I slid into his DMs because
Right.
we had mutual friends, and she said, "Hey, do you want to message him?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'll message him. I'll go through." But again, it's all about timing. It's about, you should never go in saying, "I want something from someone." You should always go in saying, "What can I learn from this person and apply it to myself?"
That's great. And I hear that as like a common, not common, but I listen to a lot of podcasts and advice that people talk about, networking with people who, have a busy life, that people who are successful. And I find that as like, how can you, what can you learn from this person? And of course, you always want to add value, but it's like, the people that are up there are willing to share what they want to know. And I've heard a public speaker say like he asked a question for someone who's really successful, and he asked them like, how did you do it? And the guy, the he was probably like a millionaire or billionaire, and he shared it. And then the speaker like interviewed him and asked him, oh, so why did you share all that with me? It's because nobody ever asked me. And I think that's
Hmm.
so relevant to this, of your story of you know being comfortable asking, but also not just trying to take something, but trying to learn a lesson.
Absolutely. I always tell people, I don't network with people because networking implies that you want something from others. I prefer to socialize with people because that way you go with an open mindset. Now, don't get me wrong, networking, you have to network, to get a job, to learn something, to talk with a mentor and everything. But at the end of the day, socializing is extremely more valuable per se. And that's because just having a conversation with someone speaks to no end of what you can accomplish and what you can learn from someone. If you're looking for a job and you go straight in, there are different ways. You can go straight in and say, "Hey, I need a job," or you can talk to whoever you're talking to, open up a conversation, tailor it to what you're looking for, and they might say, "Are you looking for a job?" And then you can go into it. It says a lot more if you don't come directly at them, because then you come off a little aggressive. But if you make it personal, if you build a relationship, you build rapport, you buy them, a coffee or something, it's endless.
Absolutely. And you and I, we've been out of college for a little while, and we've had different types of jobs, and we've traveled across the country, or me personally, I've traveled across the country, but you've done some great things around the world, which is great. And just for millennials, or any future generations that are listening to this podcast, that are just getting out of college, that are just getting a feel for how to handle workplace socialization, or if they're in sales and marketing, they gotta learn how to socialize, and have that element of networking. How do you differentiate that mindset of you're going to like a business meeting, and how do you prepare yourself to say, okay, I'm not going in here to network, I want to socialize? Or like, where do you differentiate that? Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, a little bit. Let's take it in two parts. One is the business side for millennials, and two is, out of the office. So inside the office place, what's your end goal? And that's where I think you really need to sit down with who's your direct supervisor. So a great example is mine was a guy named Brian Gengen. He is my mentor. He will always be my mentor, still is, when I worked at BNSF International. And we developed such a relationship where, with certain projects, he'd say, this is the end goal. And I'm like, okay. And just from there, it was being open. Now, everyone has different direct supervisors that are, in one sense, very authoritative, and it has to be my way or the highway, where others are, you do, I don't care how it's done as long as it gets done. And that's where I think in the workplace, you have to go in with an open mindset, and you have to be very vulnerable and say, I'm not the smartest guy here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I use the analogy. It's not the grades you make, it's the hands you shake, which applies to all levels of business, and that's where, great example, I got a D- in supply chain class in college. I went into supply chain for 2 years out of college. Like, if that doesn't say you don't know what you're talking about, but you're still in it, you fake it till you make it, I don't know what does. But that's where with millennials is, you're not going to be the smartest person. Yeah, you're at the bottom of the ladder still, and you got to work up. You got to put in time. You got to put in work. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be glamorous. But if you can say, hey, I'm learning something new from my boss, or I'm working with coworkers, or, even ask your boss, say, hey, can I buy you lunch one day? That gets them out of the workplace and say, hey, I just want to talk more, or get to know your boss on a personal level. Now, Brian is an exceptional case because we became such close where I'd still go over to his house for dinner once a week with his family. I've been fortunate to go on business trips with him. He asked if I would plan a trip to Notre Dame for him and his wife, and I got to come along with him
Wow.
for it. So it's nothing's going to happen unless you ask, and you can't be afraid to ask, especially with millennials. And then outside of the workplace, you don't need to say, oh, I work for Nike, I work for all this. Like, I think one thing I'm very proud of is I don't tell a lot of people that, hey, I got to work with Kobe Bryant, I got to work with Nike, I got to, go over to China, or I get to do all this. Instead, I said, oh, I'm in logistics, or, I'm now working for American Airlines as a gate agent. A lot of people would be like, really? Like, with American Airlines, it's definitely something that I'm really excited to start for. But just humble yourself and say, hey, this is what I do. And then ask them. It's something my grandmother taught me of 2 ears, one mouth. Use that ratio. Listen more and talk less. Let them be more engaging. Talk to them. Find some organizations that you're very interested in and you care about. One is a charity that I just flew back to DC for, called Comfort Cases, that works with foster kids, and they raise money, and I'm not sure how much we raised, but that was one event that I just flew in for that was really important to me. Another is universities. You just came out of college. I'll be the first to say it sucks, because you're like, no, I want to go out every night, I want to drink, or I want to go tailgating, I want to go do all this. Well, have you thought about working with your alumni group? I know we have just alumni networks, and we have our own group here in Dallas. And I reached out to the president. I said, I want to be more involved. How can I? So we created a happy hour it's the last Thursday of every month, where all Cyclones throughout the Dallas-Fort Worth area can come to and say, hey, let's all meet here for drinks. Let's all, just talk. And that's where you can network if you want. You could social. I prefer to socialize with people and just say, hey, how are things? Or you're new in town. Yeah, let's meet up. Let's grab a drink. Or you remember that game that we went to when we were in college? It's something where you need to focus on work and interacting with people, but also have a social life and say, if you're in a new city, even if you grew up in the same city, I have lots of friends in Minneapolis, and that's where they grew up. They went to Iowa State and they went back home, and they're very comfortable with their own friend group. And I said, that's perfectly fine. But you never know who you're going to meet that might help you with that job, might help you with introducing you to, your next girlfriend or boyfriend, or just a new friend that you never know who you're going to meet.
Certainly. And, I think you have some amazing quotes like, no, not grades you make, it's the hand you shake. And that great lesson from your grandma about it was the humbling down.
Yep. And the 2 ears, one mouth.
That's fantastic. And, I really liked your story about how, that whole supply chain concept is really learning hands-on because, we can learn so much in college, but if you take an example like Ted Sarandos, I think he's like one of the top executives at Netflix. I think he's like, right up there with Reed Hastings. And and he shares that story about how he worked in a video shop and he just worked his way up. And it's like, how do you learn about the entire video industry in just, like one college course? It's like, you can't really, you have to do that stuff
right
hands-on.
Now, I'm not saying that for every, finance, accounting, engineering, you have to have certain degrees, but it never hurts to know someone that can either help mentor you. And that's something that Brian and I became very good friends with. Is he said, I want to mentor you. I want to teach you about supply chain. And, even when I switched jobs and went to another logistics company, he was the one that actually got me the job. He was the one that introduced me to the company, and it was his recommendation actually that said, you should hire him. He's young, he's thriving, and we built that relationship. Now, it's not going to be everywhere you're able to build the relationships, but I definitely challenge people to go out of their way and talk to. Now, I'm not saying go directly to the CEO and say, hey, I want to grab lunch with you, I want to grab breakfast with you. But maybe now I have done that before. It's worked out, but not every CEO is going to be as open. You have to have a game plan. You have to, again, be vulnerable, know where your place in line is, and say, because I've been, what company was it? It was with BNSF. I remember I got in trouble because from my supervisor, her name was Karen. She got extremely upset because I was having lunch with one of the VPs, and she didn't understand that he invited me because we both shared our interest in golf, and he went to Texas, so we wanted to talk a little bit. I was moving down to Dallas, and she wasn't happy that I was doing all this. I'm like, at the same time, it's kind of selfish. You're like, I'm focusing on me and I'm not trying to get anything out of it. And I think she was jealous because she's like, why is AJ trying to jump over me? Which isn't a good quality in a manager in my view, because a manager should want you to grow, but also find a way to be better. Find a way to not jump the ranks quickly, but jump the ranks when you're ready. And their version of ready and your version of ready are going to be two different things.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. And that's so interesting that you had that experience because one of my favorite jobs, one of my favorite managers, he was like, hey, listen, you should be going above me to have conversations with my boss and my boss's boss, at least once a month. And he's like, go take him to lunch, go, sit down with him and just schedule like a half an hour to see, what you can learn from him. And I thought that was interesting. But he came from like a few really good companies that trained really good managers. So, I totally agree with you on the perspective that, managers should want you to succeed in however.
And again, you're not going to have you'll have great managers. You'll have some that you won't. You'll have some that, you're like, I really just want to, they don't want to help you. And that's something that I got very upset about, because for me, I want to learn, I want to grow, but I also want to build a relationship, because relationships to me are very, very important. There's nothing in this world that I believe relationships should be below. That is, because those are the people that you're going to rely on when you go through job changes, when you break up with someone, all over the place. Just hold on to your relationships, but also grow them. Like, I had one of my best friends, she came in for the gala. I flew her in, and I introduced her. My flight was delayed. I spent 14 hours in the DFW airport because I couldn't get an earlier flight. And she was in DC, and I was like, hey, I have friends in DC that would love to take you out for dinner or for drinks. Why don't you? And she's like, really? Like, I'm like, absolutely. These are people I care about that will want you that will show you great time. And they did. And now they're all good friends. And it's kind of funny how it all works out.
Yeah. And it sounds like you've really done a lot of work to be, a master connector, I think is the term that they use today. Have you heard of that? Like a master connector?
I haven't. And I don't, that's just me where I wouldn't even say that I'm a master connector, because again, it's not my idea isn't, again, I don't want to grow. My goal isn't to make everyone love everyone, ELE, that's a term that a lot of people have used,
Mm-hmm.
but per se, mine is just because I enjoy interacting with people. I enjoy connecting people, but it's not, again, you said master connector. I just say, I just like me. I just like being myself, because at the end of the day, if something were to ever happen, who am I going to call? I don't want to call someone that I haven't touched base for in 6 months. And I'm like, hey, I just need someone to vent to, or I need, a favor. But I'd rather, talk with them. And then, or a great example, I was in Rome, and I was stuck at the airport, and I had to get back downtown Rome, but there was no train because we didn't fly into the main one. We flew into the one that Ryanair flies into, and there were no taxis and everything. And I called my friend who was in Rome, and he knew that I was in Rome, but I was like, hey, I don't have a taxi. What's the best way to get there? He's like, give me 20 minutes. I'll be there. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I'll be there. And he actually took off work to come pick me up.
Wow.
And drive back. And that's just something where, this was 2 years ago. And then when I saw him again, he wouldn't let me pay for dinner. And he said, it's just you calling me, and the 30 minutes I got to spend with you in the car was all I wanted. I'm like, wow. So I'm very lucky with that. And that's something, relationships and connections, yes, they matter, but at the same time, I care about how other people are feeling. Are they happy? Are they sad? What can I do to make their life easier, per se?
That's awesome. And I definitely, when I did finally meet you in person, I, sensed that so much that, you just had this deep care for people. And I think that's, something that you really have to, it's just some people have that. Whereas, other people you could tell like, oh, maybe, they aren't so caring. But, I definitely sensed that with you when I was hanging out with you. So, fantastic. Yeah, definitely. Thanks
the
for
the quick 2 hours that we got to meet and have Korean barbecue. I remember that. I flew in that was my first time to LA. Well, first time, because every other time I fly through LA. I never got to be outside of LA, and you just kind of welcomed me with open arms. You're like, yeah, let's grab Korean barbecue. I'm like, okay, heck yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not? I mean, that it was great, and it was just such good timing too. Because I think it was like your last day that we were able to meet up, right? Or like almost the last day.
No, no, it was my first day.
Oh, first day.
I had just flown in from Arkansas for work. I was there for a whole week, and I literally came from the airport with my bags, and we had dinner, and then I went straight down to San Pedro where my hotel was.
All right. Yeah, amazing barbecue though. I had a good time.
It absolutely was. I miss that.
Yeah. When you coming, are you ever coming down to LA again, or is that like part of your
Yeah,
schedule?
I'm actually taking some time to self reflect. I'm actually, with this new role with American, I'm kind of stuck for the next 10 weeks here in Dallas for training. Um, it's a funny thing. I say that now, but you never know. I might be in LA. Heck, I could be in LA next week. I could be in LA in October. I have lots of people as well as you that I want to see and connect with because I haven't. And I say that I don't know when I'll be back because um, for me, my schedule changes so periodically, and I have to be open to changes. I have to be flexible. I'm as flexible as I can be, but anytime I go to a city, I always look through my contacts and I say, who do I have to see and who do I want to see? And that really separates me and gives me clear vision of who matters. Everyone, not saying that one person matters more than others, but for example, I was in LA twice in March, just literally back-to-back weeks, one for a conference and one for Texas Tech when they played in the Sweet 16 Elite Eight. And I think I reached out to you both times and I said, hey, I'd love to meet up. But one, I had a conference and that was, I was booked. But two was also, I was there for Davide Moretti and the Texas Tech men's basketball team. So, but I still let you know as well as other friends of, hey, let's grab dinner, or if we can. Otherwise, I'm busy, but I'm just thinking of you that I was here. So I'm trying to make it out to LA. There's a lot of places I need to reach out to people, but I'll be out there sooner or later.
Certainly. And I think it's great that you have a great organization skill because like I can't imagine having to, I've had some jobs where I traveled, but I can't imagine, having to balance such a busy schedule. Because you've done quite a lot of travel, I guess,
Yeah,
in my
yeah,
opinion.
I have, and I really enjoy it. I love the traveling because you meet a lot of people. And I go into the mentality of one, being open, but two, travel like it's your last day on earth. Like I randomly this year, I didn't think I'd go to Europe 3 times. One was because the first time was in London. I flew there literally on a whim. Long story short, my ex broke up with me for out of the blue after 3.5 years. And, some people, they do their own ways of coping with it. And I said,
Hmm.
screw that. I'm going to London for the weekend to see friends. And I literally left on a Thursday night, got into London Friday morning, spent 60 hours in London, didn't sleep much, saw about 22 people. I had friends. It was kind of like AJ single party, which was a lot of fun. I
Okay.
had people fly in from Russia, two friends flew in from Spain. One of my friends, she flew in from Italy to come and see me. And it was just kind of catching up with people and people that I'd interned with, people that I knew from school, people that when I was a coordinator, as well as with Nike, the people that just came out. And then I was like, okay, got to go back. And then it was like, I don't know when I'm going back to Europe. And I just had fun. And next thing I knew, it was, hey, one of the basketball players said, hey, would you come to Germany? I said, yeah, why not? So I did that. And then on the flight back, right before the flight back, I said, I kind of want to go to Paris. It'd be a fun time for, 2 days, and flew to Paris quickly and then flew back to here. And then I wasn't going to go to Italy with Davide. And I kind of suggested, like, hey, can I tag along? He's like, yeah, why don't you? I would love to. I'm like, okay. So we did that. And there's just so much where with traveling, you meet all these people, but it's, again, being organized. I don't have any Wi-Fi on the plane. And that's a huge no-no for me, because with social media and emails and everything, why can't you be disconnected for 10 hours? Like, it's so difficult for people not to look at their phones or not to put their phone on airplane mode and just shut it off for the day, because they have to, keep a streak, or they have to post about something. Where I'm like, for me, I always, every morning I wake up and I have a list of things that I have to do, whether I wrote it early that morning or late, the night before, because then I know, okay, this is who I have to email, this is who I have to call, this is what I have to do for work, etc. And that I use that same when I travel. It's, who do I know there? I look through old photos. I'm like, okay, maybe they're there, and I reach out to them on WhatsApp. But if they're not, I've had people be like, yeah, I'm not there, but for example, Sarah is also in Germany. Why don't you say hi to her? And here's her contact. Or my brother's in Rome. Why don't you? He'll take you out for dinner. I've had friends do that before.
Yeah, and I really appreciated your idea, this whole story and concept that, I've been reading a lot of books, and they talk about, being able to make use of the time that you have, especially when you're young. And I think, and correct me on anything that I might ask about, your own personal philosophy, and looking at like millennials. I think a lot of millennials can feel stuck in what they're doing, or they're scared to travel for whatever reason. And it sounds like you take life within your own, I don't know how to say this, like, you grab life by the horns. When you want to speak to a VP, you're able to build that confidence to manage that relationship. And when something happens unexpectedly, you're able to bounce back, and you're like, hey, I'm gonna go have a new experience in London. And I think that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So for people that might feel stuck, or people that are, or millennials that are maybe like scared to travel or scared to do something different, do you have any advice for them?
The biggest thing I would tell them is find someone that's going to put you in check. And I mean that by find someone that's going to honestly tell you when you messed up, when you screwed up, when, like, hey, you're not doing this right. And it's someone that, it can't be yourself, because you don't know what, you really don't understand where your life is going. But you surround yourself with people that you care. And for myself, that's, my parents, that's my mentor, Brian, that's people from Iowa State. And they really, for me, one of the biggest things, the most honest things, is finding someone that's going to keep me in line. Finding someone that's going to put you in check and say, hey, AJ, you fucked up. Like, what are you doing? Or, I don't think you should take this job. Or, you shouldn't go on this trip. Or, hey, you said something mean last night to Sarah, you should call her and, buy her drinks. Or, Clara was upset because you did this. And it's really, yeah, you're going to fail. Yeah, you're going to, mess up. But if you have the people surrounding you that, one, care about you, because we all have friends. One thing, one of my exes, her best friend would always tell her, everything's going to be fine. Like, you're great, you're phenomenal, everything, which you need someone. You need a hype person. But you also need someone that's going to really put put your life in check and say, listen, that's not the right way to do it. Go up, do better, or, go grab a drink, do something to clear your mind. But you want someone to be honest with you. You don't want someone to sugarcoat it. And that's where my friends and my mentors that I respect the most is people have told me, hey, AJ, that wasn't, the right thing to say that night. Or you really dropped the ball on this project because you had something else going on. So if you can honestly just take a step back and say, who do I trust? And it's not your best friend that says, you're the best and says all amazing things about you, because you want those. But you also, the ones that are more valuable are your mentors and your friends that are really going to put you in check and say, you fucked up. I'm going to help you get better.
That's great. And I think that ties in well with the philosophy that you were talking earlier about how, you were taught to be humble. And, I think it's great that you're able to accept that sort of feedback, because I think some people will hear like, oh, you fucked up. But then, they'll like either freeze or, they'll completely block that person out of their life just because, they were trying to help them. So it's great that you're able to, have friends like that around you and, be able to take that kind of feedback.
Yeah, those are the people that you should keep closest to you, because those are the ones that, if you're starting a new relationship, they're going to tell you, yeah, that person is great for you or not. But they're the ones that are going to be there for you when you fall, but also there when you succeed. And that's something I learned. I went through about a month and a half of unemployed where I was looking for jobs, and I had people in my corner that I hadn't talked to in years, and they were just reaching out to me and talking to me. Whereas I had friends that, I'd still see them, but they were doing themselves. They weren't focusing on helping others. Whereas the friends that I hadn't talked in years, and they were like, hey, how are things? I'm like, oh, I'm still looking for jobs. Like, really? Like, how can I help? And those are the people that I value the most, are the ones that are wanting to help you, but also keep in touch. And a lot of people will be like, oh, we're still keeping in touch. I'm like, are you though? And I'm very critical about these things where I challenge people. I say, how in touch are you with people? Like I remember when I got a cell phone at 16, my dad's boss at the time, Mr. McIntyre, who lives in LA now, and we had dinner, they had a rule for their kids is they had to call their mom once a day. And I thought that was absurd, because you have to call your mom once a day, like, or otherwise they didn't pay for the phone. Like, regardless, it wasn't a text, it was a phone call. And that's something where, moving down to Dallas, I called my grandmothers, both of them, a lot. And then I call my mom and my dad a lot. I call my boss Brian a lot, just to keep in touch with people. But then that's also where social media comes into play, where, yeah, I see that AJ was in Italy, or I see that AJ was in Germany, or he was in Hawaii. He was all over the place. Okay, but you don't know the full story. And I want you to know the story, and I want to talk to you about these things. But if I don't know that again, it's a two-way street. And I'm guilty of it, where I want to talk to other people, but whether I'm so busy or I forget things, because we're all forgetful people. I'm not the prime example or the best person. We all make mistakes, but I always try and rekindle old friendships or old relationships per se. And that's where it's very meaningful to me, because in life, you never know what's going to happen. And I'd rather have people in my corner that know what's going on. They don't need to know the full story, but at least give them, hey, this is what's going on in work. This is what's going on in my, personal life. And this is what's going on in the next 3 years that I have planned. Boom. What about you? And so that's just my outlook on life.
Right on. And I got the message, from there where, you were saying how, are you really staying in touch? You like to challenge people on that because that's important to you. And I think that really ties well in with, the idea that, maybe sometimes people are just thinking that they're doing something, but they're not truly, making that extra effort to do it at, a level where, it actually makes a difference.
Right. Right. And that's where social media takes a huge play into things where, I remember one friend, she was like, oh yeah, I want to keep in touch and everything. And she had moved down to Dallas. I'm like, yeah, let's keep in touch. But every night she was going out and she kept saying like, yeah, I'm busy. I'm like, no, you're not. You're out having drinks with random people, which again, if that's how you want to live, you can. I'm not judging how everyone is supposed to live their life. But at least be honest with people. Say, this is, bring back to when I was in Italy, I went back to my study abroad program and I talked with them and we talked about how our last dinner at this school with all the students and faculty, I made a speech and part of my speech was mean what you say when we leave. And I told people, I said, listen, study abroad trips, and you can attest to this as well as William can, Emmett, people don't keep in touch after studying abroad unless like maybe 2 or 3 good friends. I've kept in touch with almost everyone in our 60-person group, and I see a lot of them everywhere I go.
Amazing.
But I told them in my speech, I said, if you're going to keep in touch with someone, say it, but also mean it. Because I'll tell you right now, Emmett, I went around to about 10 people and I told them, hey, it was a great trip. Hope all goes well. And they were upset because I said I didn't want to keep in touch with them. And it's not, again, it's nothing on them. I just didn't feel like they were someone that I wanted in my circle. They were, an infection or whatever. I didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where I'm honest with people. I'll be straight to the point of, hey, yeah, let's definitely keep in touch. Oh, I haven't talked to you in 2 years. Why haven't you reached out? I see that you've been in Dallas for, the last 6 months. I'll call people out happily on what's going on, and people know that.
Yeah, and I think that really comes back to the concept that you're willing to also take that sort of feedback as well. So like, what you expect, also what you're willing to take, I guess. By the way, is that accurate or?
No, it is, and just be honest with people. I think is the biggest thing. Just treat, we learned in elementary school, treat others the way you want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
I take it a step farther. I say treat others better than how you want to be treated, because they'll remember that. But if it's a meaning, like, here in Dallas, I walk away from conversations with people because not because I don't agree with what their, thoughts are or feelings are, but it's like, this is going to go nowhere. And it's not like, have a meaningful conversation.
With that, since we're nearing the top of the hour, just out of curiosity, do you have time for like one more quick question?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Awesome. So just looking at mentors, you mentioned a few great mentors in your life a few times. Do you have any advice for people who are just getting out of college or out of high school, going to their first few jobs? What your advice is for seeking a mentor? Because I think that's a very important concept nowadays, whether it's in a workplace or at school
Mm-hmm.
or whatever.
Yeah, for seeking a mentor, I'd honestly backtrack to who helped you get to where you're at. That is something I will live by to the day I die. You never forget who helped you get to where, and even a small gesture. So it could be a professor. Like I joke, I have about 50 mentors in my life, my parents being at the top of the list. Now, some people aren't, as blessed as having 2 parents that have cared for them their whole life and really helped them get to where they want to be. Whereas, others, and that's where I'd say, look at a professor. Like one of my mentors at Iowa State was a professor who actually ended up leaving after 2 years, and we still keep in touch. Another one was my old boss with Nike China. And then uh, Brian and like the director of admissions at Iowa State, who gave me his old Iowa State bow tie, and I just keep in touch. And I think people, you should always, and I always talk about old stories with them. And, I remember this time, Vern, that, it was your going away party and I came and spoke to you because you were the reason I came to Iowa State. And I just say, I always thank them because we don't thank each other enough for what they have done for us. And we don't really understand they did a lot. So that's when you're looking for a mentor, you can't go out to someone and be like, I want you to mentor me. Instead, who do you value a lot? What do you value in a person? And make an effort. Reach out to them and say, hey, I just want to talk. And you'd be surprised at the amount of people that will reach out and say, yeah, how are you? It's funny, when my ex broke up with me in January, the amount of people that came out and supported, even before I went to London, is incredible. And it was just, they all knew what was going on and they wanted to check in. And I didn't expect that from a lot of my mentors. I didn't expect it from a lot of my friends, but it's because you kept in touch with people. And again, a simple, like, I always do handwritten letters as a thank you, a text messaging. Anyone can reach me at any time. I tell that to anyone who has my phone number. Yeah, you can post about it on Facebook, but it's not as meaningful because, like, I remember, one of my good friends, Jeff Johnson, he has a whole cabinet filled with handwritten letters, and his dream is when he retires, he's going to have a room in his house with the wallpaper is going to be all the handwritten letters. And that's something that my parents have always done. They got us our own stationery. Invest in your own stationery. I'd be the first one to tell you.
Nice tip.
Because those handwritten letters mean something because you actually took the time to put in and say, thank you, instead of doing a quick little, I want to thank Jeff Johnson for, this. And then you post photos and yeah, okay, great. You get 100,000 likes. But he doesn't want that because that's social media. But handwritten letters are so old school, and it says a lot to people. I love getting handwritten letters.
Mm-hmm.
So did that answer your question? I know it went into a lot of different areas with millennials and job seeking and finding mentors.
Yeah, absolutely. You got into, I think you summarized it best when you said you can't go ask for a mentor, but, throughout the conversations that we've had, you can't go out to ask for a mentor, but, you just build that relationship and you check in every once in a while. And I got that great tip. Stationary, write letters. I mean, that is powerful. I totally agree.
Yeah, that's something where in life, your best friends are going to happen and you're not going to expect them to, or that's going to be with the mentor. You're not going to expect to have someone as a mentor. Like, I had mentors, one mentor that I think the world of, his name is Shaker Raju. He was a marketing professor. He gave me a C+ at first. And I went to in his marketing class, and I took 3 other classes with him. I did an independent study with him, and I respect him more than anything in the world. I helped him plan a trip to Europe for a class and to China, and we talk all the time. But I didn't like him at first, and I still joke around with him, but I didn't. If you would have asked me, who'd be a huge, one of your top, 10 or top 5 mentors, 5 years ago, I would have said not Shaker. And now it's like, yeah, him, Vern Hawkins, Brian Jenjen, my parents, those are people that really helped develop who I am, but all have the same core values of be humble, be honest, and enjoy life.
Wow, that is amazing, final wrap up. Be humble, be honest, and enjoy life. Love that. And I think that's a great summary to, everything that we've talked about and that you've shared on this podcast. So totally appreciate your time, AJ. Thank you so much. And, do you have any words to wrap this up? Any other words?
No, I think if anyone needs to reach out to people, I think, and I speak for Emmett when I say this, reach out to us. I have no problem sharing, my social media or even my phone number and just saying, give a call and just talk. You never know where you might meet or who you might meet or what path might lie ahead just by sending a text or a phone call or an email to someone.
Fantastic. And is your Instagram public or is it private?
Yeah, it's public. There's a reason for it. So, because that way I want to reach out to people. Yeah, just AJ and Tjaden with so AJ, TJ, ADEN. That's all it is.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks so much. And everybody listening, I hope you got a tremendous amount of value out of this podcast. And AJ, you have a great day, and audience have a wonderful day as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Everyone have a great week. Bye.